Drama has always been a part of the Love and Hip Hop Atlanta set. Even the most seasoned cast members, however, were rendered dumbfounded by what recently transpired. According to production-related sources, Rashida left the set in tears following Karlie Redd's unexpected private confession. As they piece together hints from the most recent trailer and behind-the-scenes rumors, fans are already giddy. However, what specifically did Karlie say that made Rasheeda feel so uneasy? Did it have anything to do with the persistent rumors regarding Kirk's covert life? Or did Karlie say something really unexpected that took everyone by surprise? This emotional bombshell was dumped in the middle of filming, just when spectators assumed the tension would subside after weeks of mounting. Those fortunate enough to be on set described the scene as being in utter quiet after Rashida stood up, her microphone still in place, and left the room while clearly wiping her face. Additionally, several cast members stood motionless, uncertain of what to do next, while others attempted to console her. The spectacle was no longer merely for the cameras. This actually happened. We're going to explain exactly what caused this momentous occasion and why fans are raving about it, so stay tuned. From the moment Rashida entered the set that day, there was a strange vibe, even not with the cameras rolling. But it was sensed by the whole production crew. There was a lack of the typical lighthearted banter, informal side chats, and brief jokes among the cast. Rather, there was silence, silent movements, silent looks. Everyone was tense, as though none of them wanted to express it out. They all felt something was coming. Rasheeda arrived on set sporting her trademark self-assured hairstyle. Although her outfit was well-fitting, her eyes conveyed a different message if you looked closely. They were less intelligent than normal. She didn't smile a simple, like she was searching for something or someone she wasn't sure she wanted to see. She continued gazing around. For this scene, the producers had prepared a tiny lounge area. It's just a round table, 3 chairs, and some dim lighting. Nothing fancy. Bambi and Karlie Redd were already sitting and awaiting Rashida. With their hands clasped and their eyes down, they both appeared solemn. This isn't about lighthearted banter or casual catch-ups, according to the body language. Rashida greeted him politely as she sat down, but it was obvious that she wasn't feeling too chatty. She spoke in a tight, controlled voice. She looked straight at Karlie and asked, "So, what's this about?" After a moment, Karlie took a moment to respond. Rather, her jaw tensed as she looked at Bambi and then back at Rashida. She wasn't like that. Typical sloppy energy. This was more purposeful and heavier. Bambi was the first to speak. "Look, Rashida, there are certain things, but we're not trying to ambush you or anything. Some things you should be aware of." Rashida's eyes squinted a bit. "What sort of things?" There was a pause once more. Everyone holds their breath during that type of pause. Even behind the cameras, the crew seldom moved. Karlie finally leaned forward a little. Quieter than usual. Her voice was calm. "It concerns Kirk." The room was completely transformed by just 3 words. Rashida's entire face changed. Her eyes slightly darkened and her jaw tightened. "How about him?" With a flat voice, she asked. A dot. Karlie took out a tiny folder from the shelf next to her chair. It was only large enough to accommodate a few sheets of paper and was neither thick nor large, but it felt incredibly heavy, Karlie said. "I wasn't sure if I should say anything." However, she shoved the folder across the table to Rasheeda. After everything that had been happening, saying, "I can't keep this to myself no more." As Rasheeda took it up, the camera focused on her hands. Her countenance was blank, yet her finger was steady. The problem with true heredity is that it doesn't always manifest itself, like yelling or sobbing. Sometimes there's nothing but quiet. There was too much silence, so I slowly opened the folder. The flight schedule was on the first page. Rashida couldn't recall any dates of travel associated with Kirk's name. Hotel reservations were displayed on the second page. Kirk's name, the dates, and the city are all the same. However, the third page was the most impactful. A fuzzy picture that seemed like it was taken from a distance. Kirk was standing beside a woman, not kissing or holding hands, but close enough that it didn't appear to be a chance encounter. Everything was captured on camera. Rashida's expression tightens. She moved the page back and forth, gazing again. And again, her hands trembling slightly, her eyes blinking a little more quickly. Once more, as if she had misinterpreted it the first time, Karlie's voice was steady as she spoke again. Bringing this to you was not something I wanted to do. Couldn't sit on it any longer, though. After everything we've gone through, Bambi whispered, "We're just showing you this because we care, Rashida. The truth is something you deserve to know." Rashida, however, was not listening. She continued to stare at the folder. Her entire she appeared to be holding herself together with sheer willpower, as evidenced by her rigid physique. A dot. After what seemed like an eternity, she finally put the folder down on the table and carefully closed it. On top of it, her hands folded, fingers interlaced. Her voice was harsh but hushed when she talked. "How long have you been there? Karlie, are you sitting on this?" Karlie took a deep breath. "Some time. Why now?" Rashida inquired. There was a slight crack in her voice. "Why are you showing me this now in front of the cameras?" Karlie cast a downward glance. "Since I wasn't sure if it was my place before, but after witnessing everything that was happening, I couldn't contain myself any longer." Rashida closed her eyes for a moment, as if to calm herself, and exhaled slowly. Through her nose, then she got to her feet. Bambi did not move to stop her, but she did stand as well. Karlie didn't either. They merely observed Rashida silently pushing back her chair, picked up the folder and carried it as if it were 100 pounds. The words "I can't do this right now" were spoken quietly by Rashida. On the final phrase, her voice broke. "I really can't." Then, suddenly, she left the table after turning around. As she passed the production team in the lounge, the cameras followed. She continued to record every breath with her microphone. Rashida made minor noises such as gentle sniffles and footsteps that reverberated in the silent hallway. But she said very nothing. She stopped just when she got to the door and swiftly used the back of her hand to wipe her face. She then opened it and went outdoors. Just a quick return to the table without any fanfare or emotional farewell. Karlie and Bambi sat silently. Bambi ran her hand through her hair and sighed slowly. "I didn't want today to go like this," muttering. She said, "Karlie." Then said nothing. She continued to stare at the door where Rashida had just vanished. She paused for a long moment before speaking. The words, "Maybe it was never going to be easy," were spoken softly by Karlie. But at least now she knows. A few seconds later, the crew turned off the cameras, but the tension in the room persisted. Everyone moved gently and more slowly. Number 1 wished to break the stillness first. Rashida was standing on the sidewalk outside, still holding the folder. She didn't answer when her phone buzzed. In her pocket it was most likely Kirk calling. She simply remained there, gazing up at the sky while squinting at the tears that would not stop no matter how hard she tried to suppress them, as word of what had transpired began to circulate among the cast and crew. Everyone realized that this was no mere hip-hop and love moment. This was real. This was profound, okay? And things would never be the same again. Rashida was holding the folder more tightly than she likely imagined as she stood outside the stage. Every second that went by made the air around her feel thicker. Not a single camera was present. The production had decided not to film past that door because the crew was following her. However, phones continued to record remotely. Background workers, helpers, and even uninvited bystanders captured hazy footage, showing her using the back of her hand to wipe her face while standing motionless, as if she was unsure whether to move or just collapse there. Inside, The others remained seated in startled silence. Karlie was still sitting there. Even Bambi, who had discreetly moved aside with her phone in hand, wasn't acting like herself. For once, there were no side remarks or whispered jokes. Everyone understood that this was too serious to be treated like a scenario from another episode. In a secluded area, the production crew discussed whether they ought to give Rashida some room or check on her. In the end, they agreed to let her alone for the time being. At the same time, Atlanta was already hearing about what had just happened. Bloggers began posting ambiguous tweets on Instagram. Stories after being informed earlier in the day that a significant scene was being filmed. Although names had not yet been revealed, everyone who followed they already had theories about the show. Fans were right when they began writing things like, "I bet this got something to do with Kirk and Rashida again." Rashida eventually stirred. As the sun began to set, she took out her phone and placed a single, silent call. Not to Kirk. Not to. Manifestio Rasheeda remained silent for a long moment. Then her voice, raspy and low, came over the line, touring. She gave Spice a call. Spice responded almost instantly. "Hey Rasheeda, how Rue must come fetch me." 20 minutes later, Spice arrived in her vehicle, no cameras, no more personnel. She is alone. Rasheeda remained silent as she went into the passenger seat. She simply gave the folder to Spice and gazed out the window. Slowly, Spice opened it and turned each page one at a time, the airline receipts, the hotel reservations, and the grainy picture. Spice's jaw clenched. "Oh no." "Hiya," Rasheeda said in a flat tone. "Are you certain this is real?" Spice asked thoughtfully. She was aware of the dangers of making assumptions, not because she didn't think Karlie was trustworthy. Slowly, Rashida shook her head. "I'm not sure anymore." Neither of them spoke for a few seconds. There was simply the soft hum of the Spice drove them off the set with the engine of the automobile. When they returned to the lounge, Karlie, at last, rose from her seat. She wasn't the kind to remain motionless for very long. She couldn't sit and wait for someone else to make the decision, no matter how heavy things seemed right now. She ventured outside, but not very far, simply leaned with her phone against the building's side. Bambi joined her a minute later. Bambi said, "You all right?" in a quieter tone than usual. Karlie gave a shrug. "Not sure. I assumed that talking to her would cheer me up, but it doesn't. Sometimes the truth doesn't feel good, even when it's the right thing." Karlie laughed dryly. "Perhaps." Bambi nodded slowly. The two of them stood silently, watching as the final crew. Workers packed up their equipment and gear. There would be no more filming today. Or after that, as the production was officially shut down for the evening. Meanwhile, social media was heating up and fans had noticed the change in energy, even without all the details. A few behind-the-scenes videos had leaked, but not enough to reveal Rashida's face. After Sirius went down, hashtag began trending, and within hours, #LHHATL and hashtag prayer for Rashida both appeared. One blogger shared a mysterious narrative that said, "Karlie completely turned the season upside down. You guys aren't prepared." That same evening, Kirk shared an Instagram story that consisted of a black screen with a single line of text. "There are moments when silence is required." Some urged him to make a statement, while others dragged him. Fans bombarded the post with comments, demanding explanations and questioning what he meant. Spice and Rashida ended up back at Spice's place. With no cameras, no crew, just two friends, sitting in the living room with quiet music playing in the background. "You want to talk about it?" I mercilessly called him out for years of alleged lies finally catching up. But neither Kirk nor Rasha responded as the hours stretched into late night. As she gave Rashida a glass of water, Spice asked softly, "Rashed?" She shook her head. "Not yet." She sat for a while, holding the folders in her lap as if she couldn't let them go. And at last, "This isn't even about the infidelity anymore. It's about the falsehoods. All these years, believing I knew what was genuine. You know what's crazy? Rashida whispered in a quiet voice. It's like, how many times did I defend him? Rashida went on, her voice cracking slightly. How many times did I tell people it was different behind closed doors? Spice leaned forward, her tone firm but kind. You ain't got to blame yourself for trusting somebody you love. She had simply let her talk. The city lights glowed outside, but inside, everything felt quieter, dimmer, and back. Rashida laughed hollowly. Feels stupid now. The team was already holding emergency meetings at production headquarters. With footage to review, episodes to edit, and a cast to manage while ensuring that things didn't get out of hand. The rest of the team nodded in agreement as one producer said, "This ain't just another fight we can edit down. This is bigger. This is personal." By the next morning, the situation had gotten even worse. Moreover, an anonymous statement published to a gossip website by one of Kirk's former business associates said that Kirk had been operating games for years under the guise of fictitious business trips. Again, there was no hard evidence, only rumors. But at this stage, rumors were sufficient. Fans believed what they wanted to believe. And at the moment, the majority of them believed KL. Rashida ultimately made up her mind as the morning sun rose. Over Atlanta, calling production herself and saying, "I'm ready to talk." They set up a private confessional session right away, with just Rashida, a producer, and a single camera. When she showed up, there was no entourage or glamorous crew. Just her in jeans and a basic blouse with no makeup save a little gloss. "I don't know what y'all want me to say," she started, taking a long breath and sitting silently while staring into the camera. "Because I'm still figuring it out myself right now," she said. She refrained from crying on camera. She spoke in the same calm, steady tone without raising her voice. "I ain't perfect. I never claimed to be, but I always kept it genuine." She let the silence linger for a long period. She said, "It's one thing when strangers have things to say about your life. But when it's people close to you, people you trusted, that hit different." The conversation was far from over, though, as she leaned back in her chair, folded, her hands in her lap, and waited for the cameras to cut. At this point, I had to decide what was real and what wasn't. When production began, the atmosphere on set changed once more, and producers hurried to clear a private confessional room. This time without any background crew or interruptions, just the director, Rashida, and a camera operator. Rashida showed up promptly, wearing casual clothing, no heels, sneakers with her hair pulled back. She took a deep breath and said, "I've been quiet too long," softly, "and I know you've all been waiting for me to react, but I wanted to do it right." She appeared prepared, ready to say what needed to be said when the cameras began to roll. Her voice was steady, showing none of the turmoil beneath. She stopped and looked down. Fans would later observe how composed she sounded, despite the fact that her eyes darkened with pain. "Karlie laid those papers out in front of me," Rashida added. "This season has always been about showing the world who we are. Our successes, our families, and our struggles. But nobody ever showed what happens when trust breaks." She said that I felt everything freeze when I discovered hotel reservations, with names other than mine, ticket receipts for travels he never informed me about, and that picture of him with a lady I had never met. She briefly closed her eyes as though she could feel the betrayal blazing in her eyes. "I left the set because I needed space, not because I wanted to avoid the reality, but because I needed to face it alone." My heart rushed to my throat, and for a while I was unable to breathe. She sucked in a gasping breath and the sound was muted. She glanced back at the lens. "I've spent years defending Kirk, telling people we were unbreakable. Telling myself he loved me, he respected me, he'd never hurt me like that. Behind the scenes, no one understood why I did it. They thought I was being dramatic. This was life, I assure you." However, the folder stated otherwise. Rasheeda paused once more, her voice catching, and she said, I didn't just lose faith in him. I want people to know that this isn't just about a man stepping out. It's about living with the secrets," she said in a calm, rhetorical tone. "So, what happens now? Do we pick up the pieces and pretend?" That admission landed like a punch, and fans would later highlight it as the moment she stopped playing the reality star and started being a real person. The room remained still with no word from the crew, and Rasheeda allowed the silence to linger so that every viewer at home could share in her experience. "I'm here to say I'm choosing myself now," she said, her voice growing louder. "I'm choosing myself now." As a counterpoint to Karlie's folder, she said, "I was holding on to this too." She reached forward and gently pushed an envelope toward the camera, revealing to fans that it contained her own compiled evidence texts where Kirk had stated he loved another woman's voicemail she'd found but never played. Being honest, even when it hurts, because that's the only way forward. However, it wasn't until Karlie showed me something that I realized I had my own receipts. The camera cut, but Rashida didn't get up right away. She sat there for a moment with her eyes closed, as if mentally preparing herself for whatever it was. Everyone on set knew that this moment had changed everything. Reality TV moments were frequently made in confessional rooms, but they rarely felt this raw dot. It wasn't just one storyline anymore. It was a complex web of betrayals, half-truths, and emotional wreckage. They didn't know exactly how to handle the situation outside the confessional production, so they just recorded their strongest cast member confessing her own truths in a way that no one anticipated. Later that night, mall workers brought. The plan was to let them talk it out face to face, but by now everyone knew that talk wasn't like any other. It would be an emotional reckoning. Rashida returned to a group scene, this time with Karlie and Mimi. She strolled in first without glancing at Karlie and just sat down, folded her hands, and looked straight ahead. Karlie, with a small bag in her hand, came in next, her stance composed and serene, pausing when she noticed Rashida before sitting down across from her. Rashida nodded slightly and turned to face Karlie. "You went through my personal life," she murmured in a low voice, while Mimi sat awkwardly between them, adjusting her microphone and clearing her throat. "I know this is hard," she said gently, "but perhaps it's time to listen to each other." Karlie looked at her in front of everyone. "I did, and I'm sorry you had to find out way." Karlie sounded regretful for once. It wasn't the defensive tone fans had seen when the rumors initially surfaced. "He could hide it from me. You couldn't keep it from me." Rashida laughed bitterly. "This was genuine. Thought maybe you already knew," Karlie went on. "But I realized you didn't, and I couldn't keep it from you." Mimi watched both women, her look pained, and murmured gently, "We all share the blame. Kirk sat with those falsehoods right next to me," and Karlie shook her head. "That's not on me." The room felt like it may split in two. Rashida leaned forward, tears welling up again, but she fought them back. "So what now?" "We let things simmer for too long, pointed fingers, and made excuses." "Should we just bring him back in and hope for the best?" she inquired. The door opened before Karlie could respond. Kirk entered the room as expected, and everyone froze. He glanced at Rashida and then at Karlie. He didn't say anything, just that tense moment. Rasheeda got up and almost bumped into her chair. "I had to." The producer signaled 2 roll cameras. Whatever happened next would be recorded for millions to see. Kirk said, her voice trembling, and she returned. Kirk swallowed, his voice quiet. The camera focused on Kirk's face as he stepped toward Rashida. "I know I hurt you," he said in a raw voice. "Watch them both." Mimi sat between them, looking as though she wished she could vanish. "I'm sorry." "More than you can imagine," Rashida said, her eyes full of pain and rage as she shot back. "Sorry, don't fix receipts. Sorry, don't erase the lies." Kirk's shoulders slumped momentarily, and Karlie's head jerked up as though she hadn't anticipated that line. Nobody said anything. Rashida then started crying uncontrollably. "I gave you everything," she muttered, "and perhaps that was my error." As Kirk reached for her hand, the cameras rolled and she retreated, taking a step back. "I'm not sure if I can pull this off," she said. "I'm not sure whether there's anything left to fix," she replied, her voice quivering. Rashida turned to Karlie, a look of amazement on her face, and for a moment it seemed as though that friendship, that bond, could find a way. Karlie observed calmly, her own tears flashing in her eyes. "Perhaps you both need time," Karlie said gently, "space to figure out whether what you have is still worth saving." Rashida's visage hardened as she turned back to Kirk. "I need to find peace on my own," she stated, adding, "and until I do, I can't keep pretending everything is okay." She then left the room, walking by Kirk and Karlie while silently crying for a long while. The camera remained on Kirk as he collapsed onto the couch with his head in his hands. Karlie hesitated before reaching over and placing a hand on his shoulder. And then the scene was finished. The set fell silent, the cameras stopped. And what viewers watched seemed like a fairy tale breaking. The set felt more empty than ever after Rashida left. And Kirk sat heavily on the couch with his fingers tangled in his hair. Karlie hesitated before she put a hand on his shoulder. Perfect world breaks in 2 dots. As the rumble of that unfiltered raw confrontation spread online, fans everywhere knew they had witnessed something that would define this season forever. The cameras were still rolling, but no one said a word. And the silence was a statement in itself. Outside, he looked up, his eyes red, and nodded at Karlie. Crew members exchanged anxious glances. This season had always thrived on tension, but now it felt as though reality itself was seeping into the footage. Producers discussed delaying the next group scene to give everyone time to process. "Lo," she said softly as she sat down next to Kirk. Kirk swallowed hard, his throat moving. "I never meant for it to get out like this," he said in a rough voice, "but I can't lie anymore, not even to myself. I thought telling the truth would help. I didn't know it would hurt so many people." Karlie closed her eyes and nodded, saying, "Sometimes the truth is a knife, but it's better than living in a coffin of lies." Fans discussed what would happen next online as they spoke, with live feeds showing snippets of Karlie looking exhausted but determined, and Kirk wiping his face with the back of his hand. Another depicted Karlie gazing into space with pain etched on her internal features. Mimi seemed to steer the scene back on course by stepping forward and grinning softly, saying, "We're going to finish this today, let's be honest," she said. "There should be no more secrets." "You all deserve to hear from me," Kirk said, taking a deep breath. "So, here it is." He stood and walked to the middle of the room, where everyone watched as he took his phone out of his pocket. He held it up and said, "I discovered something else. I never erased those messages I believed I had. They are elderly, having existed before our marriage." He was the first to swipe the screen in Rashida's direction. Her trembling hand was captured on camera. She grabbed for it, but she's squinting to read the little text. She grabbed the phone near. Her mouth dropped open in a gasp. "Even back then," she muttered, "he was talking to someone else. How could I have missed this?" Kirk's shoulders drooped and he started crying. "I was afraid," he said. "I fear losing you. I'm afraid of losing my reputation." It persisted, even after I blocked it out. Rashida's eyes were shiny and red when she looked up. Her words were, "So you let it fester." Room held its breath and said, "You allowed it to spread like a cancer." Cry turned away and glanced at Bambi, who nodded slightly. There was an underlying camaraderie between them despite all of this stress. "I'm sorry," Kirk said. "I can't go back in time, but I can try to show you that I've changed." Rashida took a trembling breath. She wiped her tears and turned away. Her words, "Trying isn't enough. Not when you've built your life on lies." Once more, Kirk and Karlie were left alone when she left the middle area. Kirk leaned against the couch and dropped to his knees. Karlie placed her hand on his back as she stood behind him. Mimi gave the cut signal. No one moved, but the camera stopped. There was too much tension in the air, too uncooked. A private meeting with senior producers was held later that evening. They went over the day's video. Rashida's breakdown, Kirk's admission, and Karlie's unwavering stare. They argued over whether to cut it down or air it exactly as is. Some claimed it was the most interesting plot ever depicted in a motion picture. Others were concerned that it was too painful and personal. Rashida, meanwhile, went back to her house. She was still holding the folder tightly. She placed everything on the coffee table as she entered her living room, including the hotel reservations, messages, and receipts. As though attempting to make sense of everything, she sat down and went over each piece of evidence once more. Outside of the show, she later texted her closest friends to ask for advice. Some advised her to permanently leave Kirk. Others cautioned her, bringing to remember the years they had spent building together. However, Rashida was aware that she alone made the choice. Filming resumed with a smaller scene the following day. Mimi, Spice, and Bambi were seated in a circle, discussing what they had seen. Just their responses, not Kirk nor Rashida. Spice's tone faltered. Though I've seen a lot, Rashida has never looked like that to me. She has always been the rock, but she appeared so tiny and disoriented. Bambi wiped away her own tears and nodded. Karlie is correct. Truth can sometimes pierce deeper than lies. But this is what we did to her. We ought to have spoken up sooner. Mimi let out a sigh. Judging from the sidelines is simple. However, given her situation, I'm not sure if we could all manage it. Producers took notes while they talked. They were aware that viewers were drawn to this unvarnished, unadulterated honesty. They incorporate those responses into the next episode. Hey, sandwiching it between Kirk's request for forgiveness and Rashida's confession. Kirk came back to set that afternoon for another one-on-one, this time with Mimi. The air was heavy as they sat down, but Kirk appeared more stable. When he said, "I'm here to answer questions," Mimi asked softly, "Any questions? How do you want people to remember you? As the person who lied or as someone who admitted it?" Looking into the camera, Kirk hesitated. "I want to be known as someone who has the guts to own up to his faults, even though I can't make everything better." Many viewers who watched it again online found that admission to be poignant. While some social media users criticized Kirk for being too little, too late, others commended him for taking the initiative. The set was buzzing with excitement by the time Rashida came back for the week's last group scene. Everyone was curious about her appearance, words, and whether she would even show up. She went directly to Kirk as soon as she was inside. She was not surrounded by cameras. Two persons who had endured hell stood face to face for a brief moment. Without any applause, she gazed at him. Next at he now held the folder in his hand. Karlie had shown her the same one a few days prior. "I have witnessed all of her silent words. I also pardon you. Partially? ... I don't forgive the lies he told. I forgive the man I know. He told lies." Kirk's gaze grew softer. "I'm grateful," he muttered. She gave one nod. "Together, truth and trust must be restored. You must live it every day if you desire that." After saying that, they all sat down at the table where Mimi and Karlie were waiting, 3 of them in a circle, while the cameras were rolling. There was a glimmer of optimism outside, but the air was still thick. Fans watched teasers for the next episode, which focused on new rumors, Rashida's pardon, and Kirk's ability to become a global sensation. Even though the season was still going well, that particular instance felt like a real turning point. Sincere step toward recovery, reconciliation, and perhaps even a fresh start. What do you believe will happen to this power couple after witnessing Rashida's unfiltered breakdown and Kirk's heartfelt confessions? Is this the quiet before a storm? Or will Rashida's partial forgiveness result in actual change? What about Karlie? Did her audacious move ignite anything? The open discussions that everyone required, or did it merely exacerbate the hurts? Tell us what you think. Do you think Kirk and Rashida can regain trust, or is their relationship irreparable? When Karlie first placed those receipts on the table, did you support her, or do you believe she went too far? Tell us where you stand and share your ideas in the comments section below. Are you cheering for Rashida's new beginning, supporting Kirk's journey of redemption, or just enjoying the raw drama? Had this episode, give us a thumbs up and show your support if you were glued to the screen. Don't remember to subscribe to Love and Hip Hop Atlanta Season 13 so you don't miss a single twist. It's only getting more intense from this point forward. 2. Remain informed about every confession, every revelation, and every unanticipated turn. Trust us, we're just getting started and you won't want to blink.